McLaren thought their Monza controversy would blow over. They were wrong. Oscar Piastri's growing frustration, Mark Webber's public accusations of favoritism, and fan backlash have reached a tipping point that threatens to derail McLaren's championship campaign. This isn't just about one pit stop anymore, it's about trust, championship momentum, and whether McLaren can keep their title fight from imploding. The incident that sparked this firestorm began with McLaren's carefully orchestrated strategy at Monza. The team's original plan was straightforward: pit Piastri first to cover Charles Leclerc, followed by Lando Norris with a crucial guarantee there would be no undercut. Over the radio, Will Joseph reassured Norris there would be no undercut. Norris double-checked, Joseph confirmed, and the plan was locked in. What followed exposed the perfect contrast between flawless execution and mechanical failure. Piastri delivered a stunning 1.9-second pit stop, while Norris suffered a catastrophic 4-second disaster when his front left wheel nut became stuck. The result? Piastri emerged ahead despite pitting first, having executed his part of the strategy to perfection. Then came the controversial moment that would define this entire debate. Tom Stallard instructed Piastri to give the place back. Piastri's answer cut to the core. Slow pit stops had always been considered part of racing, so why was this different? Still, he obeyed, and that in itself says a lot. A young driver fighting for a championship will take the hit for the bigger picture, but resentment lingers. The compliance from the young Australian revealed both his professionalism and the underlying tension that would only grow in the weeks following Monza. Andrea Stella later attempted to justify McLaren's decision through what he called principles-based management. Stella later explained that the choice was about principles. The pit sequence had been arranged for the team's overall benefit, not to alter track positions. Since the botched stop had shuffled the order, restoring it was, as Stella put it, the fair thing to do. The team argued they were simply honoring a pre-race agreement and restoring the baseline between pit wall and drivers. But this corporate explanation failed to satisfy racing purists, who believed the stopwatch should be the final arbiter. The backlash has been building steadily since that September afternoon in Italy. Piastri has maintained public composure in interviews, but his tone ever since has carried a clear message. He believes he did nothing wrong and feels frustrated at paying the price for circumstances outside his control. Body language experts and F1 observers have noted the underlying tension in every media appearance, with the psychological impact of losing 3 points after a perfect drive clearly weighing on the championship leader. Mark Webber has emerged as the most vocal critic of McLaren's handling of the situation. He's not alone in that view. Mark Webber has openly pointed to what he considers growing favoritism. And with his experience in the sport, his instincts on such matters are sharp. Webber's intervention carries significant weight because he lived through similar dynamics during his career. He still remembers keying the radio with, "Not bad for a number 2. He knows how tiny incidents can snowball into perceptions of favoritism. When he says the gap on paper undersells Piastri's true control of the title race, it's not a patriotic defense, it's a technical argument for respect. The fan and media reaction has been equally damaging for McLaren's narrative. Damon Hill weighed in with characteristic wit, running a poll that delivered a clear verdict. Hill poked fun at the policy with a tongue-in-cheek story from 1993 and then ran a poll. A clear majority opposed the order. That result matches the gut instinct of many supporters. The broader fan sentiment reveals a hierarchy of acceptance for team orders. They're tolerated when one driver is the clear title favorite, accepted when the strategic picture is obvious, but strongly disliked when they override an outcome that unfolded naturally on track. Monza fell squarely into the least acceptable category. The championship implications extend far beyond the immediate 3-point swing. Piastri left Monza with his cushion trimmed to 31 points and 8 races still to run. While this remains a strong lead, the psychological dynamics have shifted dramatically. Dropping 3 points on a day where he drove flawlessly tightens the psychological margins. The narrative has transformed from dominant control to defensive championship management, a subtle but crucial change in momentum. For Australian motorsport fans, this controversy carries additional symbolic weight. Piastri has already matched Webber's 9 wins and overtaken Ricciardo's 8. He's now chasing Alan Jones and Jack Brabham in the record books. More significantly, he's pursuing his first world championship. aiming to be the first non-European champion since Villeneuve in 1997. When you're writing history in real time, every team order feels heavier than it would in April. This historical context amplifies every decision and adds pressure to McLaren's management approach. The deeper problem McLaren faces involves the fundamental tension between racing purity and championship management. Racing purity values execution and accepts luck, good or bad. Championship management values promises and minimizes risk. The best teams find ways to reconcile both in terms their drivers trust. McLaren claims this is exactly what happened at Monza, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Stella admitted that the team will review the guidelines both for slow stop scenarios and pit sequencing, and then align with the drivers. In other words, the rulebook is still being written. This admission reveals McLaren's core vulnerability, the absence of clear, consistent precedents for handling similar situations. Trust erosion occurs when, the moment one camp senses the scales tip, confidence erodes, even if the factory insists the telemetry says otherwise. The comparison to Red Bull in 2010 becomes relevant here, as multiple observers have noted that McLaren currently lacks the institutional favoritism that characterized other dominant teams. There's no institutional favoritism set in stone. That distinction is critical. It means the outcome is still in McLaren's hands. Looking ahead, the predictable response cycle has already begun. Piastri will say the right things and bank his points. Norris will insist he's moved on and keep swinging. The team will run a procedural review. However, Qatar will bring its own chaos and the entire structure will be tested again. Every future decision will now be viewed through the Monza lens, with both drivers and fans scrutinizing McLaren's consistency. The championship endgame presents McLaren with 8 races to prove their system works fairly. If both drivers still believe the contract is fair, McLaren will fight to the finish with 2 live title shots. If doubt sets in, the path gets steeper than necessary. The solution requires more than corporate speak and procedural reviews. You don't diffuse controversy with soft words. You diffuse it by publishing the principle, committing to it in advance, and proving it applies in every direction. The broader F1 community is watching McLaren's every move with unprecedented scrutiny. Jacques Villeneuve's recent comments add another layer of complexity, as he argued that Webber is a valuable asset for Piastri because he knows what it's like to fight for a crown inside a team orbiting a star teammate. This external validation of Webber's concerns amplifies the pressure on McLaren's leadership to address the underlying issues rather than simply managing the public relations fallout. Norris, meanwhile, has pushed back against suggestions of mental fragility, admitted he admires the sharp edge of drivers like Verstappen, and made clear he wants to win his own way. This candor reveals the delicate balance McLaren must maintain between 2 equally capable drivers who both believe they deserve championship support. The coming races will determine whether McLaren can transform this controversy into clarity, or whether the Monza decision becomes the turning point that defined their championship campaign for all the wrong reasons. Do that, and McLaren's framework will look like strength, not spin. Fail, and the echoes of Monza will trail them all the way to Abu Dhabi. The stakes couldn't be higher for a team that appeared to have everything under control just weeks ago. What seemed like a routine strategic decision has evolved into a fundamental test of McLaren's championship credentials and their ability to manage 2 world-class drivers under maximum pressure.